Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Financing Philadelphia's Future. I'm Vanessa Lowe, your host, and we're going to jump right in. Today is a conversation with two of our leaders from the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition, and it's all about their latest initiative. So we're excited to jump right in. We're going to have Peter Winslow and Stan Shapiro. Again, welcome everyone. Settle yourselves in. The best way to look at this is the speaker view. And please put questions into the chat. We have, I think, at least Susan, who's going to be monitoring our chat today. All right. Thanks so much. Let's get started. Peter, please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you, Vanessa. I'm Peter Winslow. I'm a member of the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition and member of the board of the Public Banking Institute.
I'm Stan.
I'm Stan Shapiro, Vice Chair of Philly Neighborhood Networks, former Chief Staff Attorney, Philadelphia City Council, a long time ago.
All right. Thank you so much for being here and for having this one-to-one conversation about the latest proposal. You all have submitted something to City Council. Excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all have submitted something, a proposal about using portion of the city pension fund to support initiatives in the city of Philadelphia that will support the citizens. So let's start with what is the proposal? Peter, let's let you start that one.
Oh, thanks, Vanessa. The proposal at the simplest is simply that we're asking the city pension fund to invest some of its funds in local projects that will help people in Philadelphia rather than people elsewhere. Most of the pension fund is invested in other things that are not specifically designated for the city of Philadelphia and for people in Philadelphia. We're looking for local economically targeted investments, which are investments that are specific to Philadelphia. That's the essence of the proposal. The specifics of the proposal is that we're asking that a policy be adopted to target 2% of the pension fund, which amounts to around $168 million for this purpose, for local economically targeted investments, which in the jargon world we call ETIs.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Stan, why don't you start talking about why are you all making this proposal?
Well, it's really common sense. There is an $8 billion fund that the city administers through the pension board, and it has impacts when it's invested. If it's invested in fossil fuel companies, that means that they can drill some more. If it's invested in luxury housing, that means that more people, rich people, can buy condominiums. It ought to be invested in things that regular people need, particularly in Philadelphia, where we have a tremendous inequity in every economic measure between white folks and people of color. And redlining is alive and well. It never went away. This is the best way to counter redlining, to have assets under the control of the city and an advisory committee of stakeholders that they can directly invest rather than try to pressure big banks to do it and try and get reports and do regulations and all kinds of monitoring, but you never for sure really know what they're doing. If we have a fund that's under our control, we can use that money in the way that we intend to have it used.
And also, I may add that the particular kinds of targeted, economically targeted investments that we have in mind are the ones that were identified in the ordinance to establish the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority, there are 9 areas, but the 3 that deal with development are affordable housing, cooperatives, and minority-owned small businesses. And that's where we would suggest that the pension fund concentrate initially.
Okay, sounds good. And are these economically targeted initiatives effective elsewhere? Are other people doing this?
Yes, it's being
Yes.
done elsewhere. Around the world, it's being done. You know, when you present an idea like this to folks, they say, that's a great idea. How come we haven't, it's not already being done? How come how come it's not there? And the answer is that we actually, it is being done in other places. And Stan, why don't you talk about what they're doing in New York, where they have the same 2% target?
Well, I just put a link to the New York City program in the chat. They have created a program that's been around for about 30 years now.
That's a long time.
And if you check that link, you'll see that they have invested more than $388 million in multifamily housing, $762 million in single family housing, a total of almost 50,000 units, spending over $1 billion, investing over $1 billion in the pension fund. It is a very effective program, and there are many others actually around the country. I'm going to put a link in that demonstrates the effectiveness of this program in at least 5 other jurisdictions. It shows that they not only produce benefits to the citizens of these jurisdictions, but they actually perform better. Economically targeted investments actually perform better than conventional investments. So
And
I'm
also,
also putting that link in.
economically
Thank you.
targeted investments that's the business. That's the business model of the World Bank. That's the business model of regional development uh, agencies. So this is a concept that is in use around the world.
Right. And again, it's a
Mhm,
concept that is in use in pension funds. So if
mhm.
people are still getting their pension, and in fact, I
Yeah.
mean, the way you're describing it, it's they're getting an extra benefit beyond their pension, which is, oh, the investments are staying in my city. Maybe I'm
Mhm,
buying one of those, affordable houses or something. So
mhm.
yeah, it makes a lot of
Absolutely.
sense. What is happening with the proposal now? What's been the response?
We have definitely attracted interest by members of council and their staffs, some of whom are with us right now, and want to give a shout out to them. We really appreciate their being here. And so a partnership is developing, which we think is going to be very powerful. We are going to need, there's no doubt, that if you're disrupting the status quo, which this will do, no matter how deserved it is to disrupt that status quo, that there will be a lot of opposition just because you're changing things. So we're going to be in touch with everybody who's here and others who are interested in ways that you can express your support for this idea. It is going to need a lot of um, people power to make this happen. But the good news is there are definitely members of council who see the benefit of this, and we expect that we're going to be having a productive relationship with them.
And Vanessa, we presented this proposal in the form of a concept paper to both the City Pension Fund and to the Parker transition team back in December. And the City Pension Fund has thanked us and taken it under advisement, and they are looking at the proposal. And we're hoping that we will be able to engage with them in a collaborative discussion and exploration of all aspects of this. We want this to be looked at very thoroughly. This is not something that we want them to do without full deliberation and consideration of all the factors that apply.
Gotcha. It's interesting because we're in a state of lots of new city council people, so lots of learning. But good for you all for, trying to get this in there. So sounds good. Let's dig in a little bit more. You've mentioned some of the specifics, but what is the specific ask? Let's break that down a little bit. How much are we talking about? What's the process?
Well,
Go
the
ahead, Peter.
first step in the specific ask is that the city pension fund establish an asset class for local economically targeted investments. Right now, they have asset classes for global equities and global real estate, but nothing that's targeted for local projects, local economically targeted investments. And that's what we're really asking them to do, is to create an asset class. They can do that at any stated meeting of the investment committee of the city pension fund or at an annual meeting. So it's not that hard for them to set up the asset class. Once they have the asset class, they should set a target, which would be a policy that is set by the pension board itself. And then it's a question of being able to have programs in place that will accomplish that and meet their target.
Got it. All right. Where will the pension fund find suitable ETI investment vehicles?
Well, there are a number of programs in the city right now that are formulated to help people who can't otherwise get financing. There are a number of quasi-public agencies which have found ways to reduce the carrying cost for various loans and investments. We think that this initiative can provide more of that capital and even lower rates in some cases, because the pension fund is not required only to charge high rates, so that each investment is not required to get a return, which is a super high return. If there are other benefits to the pension beneficiaries apart from return, that has been found to be a legitimate investment. And we're expecting that with a fund of $168 million, 2% of the pension fund, that we can supplement many of the other programs that are out there.
Yeah, partners would include the Accelerator Fund, the Philadelphia Green Capital Corporation, the Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation. Mayor Parker is very much a supporter of repair, restore, rebuild, and that has some funds. It does not have a very high return, but that's the kind of program that could be assisted by having a secondary market where once there's been an origination of a loan, for example, a mortgage portfolio that's held by a credit union or a minority depository institution, that there would be a way of packaging those loans in a way that they could become the investment of the pension fund, and in that fashion provide liquidity for the other financial institutions in the city.
Okay. Do you have a sense of, so this new category of asset that you're recommending, do you have a sense of what would be the expected return? Or is that for them to decide later?
We think that we should be looking for not necessarily market rate of return as the standard, but the norm for the pension fund overall, so that the pension fund would remain as solid for the beneficiaries of the fund as it currently is. We think that, in fact, we can improve the performance of the pension fund in terms of its risk and reward, and that it should be possible to package these investments in a way that is cost effective and with less transaction cost than is done by the investment bankers. But the investment bankers can package these kinds of properties into vehicles suitable for the pension fund. We're specifically looking to tailor investment vehicles that are exactly what the pension fund is looking for. So it wouldn't be going out into the marketplace and finding investments that the pension fund would want to invest in, but having those investments specifically designed for the pension fund. This is an example or a precedent that was set in California, where CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement System, where the government set up an agency by executive order to go and find local investments for the pension fund in exactly this way. That's the kind of model that we think would apply here.
Gotcha.
It should be
Gotcha.
noted, it would be worth noting that the New York City Comptroller did a study of the returns that their fund generated from traditional investments. And they found that over a period of 10 or 20 years, I'm not sure the exact period of time, the pension fund earned something like 1% from those investments after deducting the ridiculous fees that Wall Street charges for the privilege of providing them with bad advice on what kinds of investments to make. We really have very little to fear from looking at other ways of earning a return.
There you
And
go.
that's one of the things that we think there could be a role for the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority to serve an investment banking function and to package investments suitable for the pension fund if other sources aren't available, or actually we think that it can do it with less transaction cost.
Gotcha. So could these ETIs also be appropriate for institutions like endowments, for example, in addition to the city pension fund?
Absolutely. We think that the University of Pennsylvania Endowment Fund, I'm a Penn graduate, I'd love to see Penn invest in local projects that would benefit the community. The same thing is true of our foundations, like the William Penn Fund and other organizations such as that, and others. I might note Tom Skouros, who is our guest last month, can't be here today, but I spoke with him, and he is going to be at a meeting in New York on Friday with labor folks, labor pension personnel, looking at the same kinds of proposals, the same kinds of projects that we're proposing for the Philadelphia Public Pension Fund.
Yeah.
So
For those of
some
you,
questions in the chat. Maybe we ought to go to a few of those.
okay. Susan,
Yeah,
give us a
there's
question.
a number of questions in there, and let me just invite folks to stay on after at 4:30 for an informal. If your question doesn't get answered here in this half hour, Sheila wonders about the fact that the pension fund is not fully funded, that it's only funded at 60%, and what might that have an effect on whether the folks are willing to go with this kind of proposal.
Well, the fund has actually improved its performance with respect to the unfunded liability. It was under 50% at the time of the 2008 crash, so it's gotten up to 60%. But the super concern about funded portions of the pension fund are probably beyond what the actual needs are, because ultimately the city itself and the state are responsible for paying pension obligations. It does not have to come entirely from the fund. And the city and state are contributing right now. We're thinking that it's going to be easier for the city and state to contribute if we develop the economy that generates the taxes that the city and state contribute. So we actually think that this is a proposal that does good by providing direct benefits, and then also by providing the indirect but very important benefit of generating income that the fund can use for pensioners.
Yeah, I also think it's worth pointing out that that a lot of the improvement in the performance and the funding of the city pension fund has happened under the watch of our finance director, Rob Duval, that he has been very good at incrementally improving the status and the security of the pension fund. But as Stan says, that's a separate issue from the one that we're talking about.
A good
And at
part,
the same-
just very briefly, very briefly, a good part of, if not all of the increase in the funded portion of the fund comes from the fact that there were new labor contracts which require workers to pay more into the fund, and reduce benefits, and have converted the defined benefit plan, which most workers in the city have, to a defined benefit plan, which doesn't even actually guarantee a return. So it's not that the fund has been managed so well that its unfunded liability has gone down. It's been other things mostly.
Yeah,
And for those of you who didn't see last month's episode, it is available on the website with Tom Seguros. He made some really good points in answer to this question that we just got from Susan. Susan, let's get another question from you before we go back to the guys.
Okay, let's see. There's some concerns about administrative costs. This is from Elaine. Would there be government administrative costs?
All right, and I think that falls under the question of how will the proposal affect the beneficiaries of the pension fund? This is kind of what we're hearing now coming, those kind of questions. So talk about that a little bit, guys.
Well, there are tremendous fees that are being charged by the current Wall Street managers of the fund. We don't really know what they are. The fund is not very transparent. There's a lot of information that hopefully we can get from them as we vet this proposal more. But it's hard to imagine that the administrative costs for the kind of program we're talking about, where there are many experts out there in the city who know about these kinds of investments, and we could probably retain one or more of them to manage this portion of the fund at very little, if any, extra cost to what's being charged now. But those are issues we're going to have to investigate.
I think if anybody's really interested in that issue, they should look at what's gone on with the Pennsylvania pension funds and paying consultants and returns, and been a whole multi-year scandal of things versus just sticking it in a hedge fund and the values. But what this does, the real safety in this kind of lending is that we know who the folks are. Whereas if you're investing in a sweatshop in China, you don't. And so that's really what the underlying safety. And the other underlying safety is you can rely not only on, depending on what you're lending on, not only on the return of the loan, but you can do things like you're talking about making the economy work better. Well, you could capture that money and dedicate, just the same way we abate taxes, we could collect the taxes in that project or in that neighborhood and use that as a secondary insurance to those funds, to goose up the return of those funds. There are all kinds of ways you can the city, if it does energy projects that relate to people who they're either paying for or their own stuff, for example, they can have savings on their energy bill that, again, is not part of the loan per se. It's not reflected in the interest rate, but there's a savings that take place elsewhere in the great city revenue stream, that money can be captured and returned into securing the pension loan in some way. So there's a bunch of different other economies to capture that
Thank you, Dan.
it a whole lot safer, and also who these folks are, so that also makes it safer.
Thank you, Dan. With just about 5 minutes left, Susan, let's go back to you and see if you have some more questions.
Just to note that Jesse suggests that childcare would be a good investment.
Always a good investment in childcare. Yes. Any others?
No. I think we pretty much got it. What's here?
Okay. So let's say, talk to us about next steps, guys. Where are you now in the process, and what are the next steps?
Well, we're hoping to enter into an exploratory conversation with folks at the city pension fund and in the administration, so that we can move the idea forward and do the research, and make sure that people are comfortable with this idea to explore the things that we don't necessarily know right now, identify problem areas or potential problem areas. As Dan was pointing out, there are many special advantages that we can have in a local investment program that do not exist for some of the other projects, and also to do an investigation of just how much the impact, the overall impact for Philadelphia will be from this kind of a project in terms of increased jobs and economic activity. You know, we're looking for leadership, and we're looking for the leadership of our city pension fund to show the way for other labor unions and others that would also be suitable for investment in local economically targeted projects, and to bring some of our money home from being invested around the world to being invested where it'll do Philadelphia some good.
Absolutely.
I want to very quickly say that in terms of getting this done, there are three ways. One would be if the pension board, which is made up of 4 administration representatives, 4 labor representatives, and the city controller, they can decide on their own that they want to create a program like this. Or city council can mandate it by ordinance. So we could work on developing language which would go into the city code to mandate that. That's legal. It's been done before. And then the third is if the mayor really gets behind this, she has many ways of exerting influence. So those are the 3 targets that we will be going after, and the controller. Controller's on the board too. Mm-hmm.
So we seem to have a lot of supporters, or at least interested parties on this Zoom today. Are you asking them to reach out, do anything, make any calls yet, or we're not quite there?
I think we're not quite there. We will be soon,
Okay.
but
Okay.
we're still working out the details of our strategy.
For those of you who didn't see, I hope we can put the link to the Inquirer article by our 2 esteemed guests today, Stan and Peter, that was about a week and a half ago. Let's try to put that link in. Hopefully a lot of you saw that article, and we'll try to get more in to start. And it was all about the initiative.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day, how perfect. Love letter to the city pensioners. All right, Susan, I'm going to go back to you to see if you have any final questions.
There's one more, a question from Alexandra wondering about unions and union involvement. Have we reached out to the unions?
Well, there are the union representatives or the city workers, which includes the Fraternal Order of Police and the firefighters, and all the other city workers. We have not independently gone and spoken to people in those unions because out of deference and respect for their representatives on the pension board. We're hoping that as this becomes a public discussion, that more people from the unions, or people who are beneficiaries of the pension fund, will participate in the discussion with us, and will back this proposal because it's to their benefit as well as the benefit of everybody else in Philadelphia.
Thank you both. So here's the thing: we're at the end of the time for our standard half hour for Financing Philadelphia's Future, but we're leaving it open. We're going to turn off the recording, but we're leaving it open because we have so many people here who I think want to discuss this a little bit more, maybe without a recording on. So you're welcome to stay. Those of you who need to leave, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month.